Hey everybody, it's Charles, your hobby hero, coming at you with another video today. Today we are going to be discussing the limited format for Disney's Lorcana's first chapter, specifically the drafting format. But first, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button down in the bottom corner. I do appreciate it. I do put out regular content about the hobbies that I love the most, with this channel being dedicated to the card games that I play. Now, I am excited as anybody else because with the restock that we have gotten this week, we have stores that actually have product in hand again, and a couple of our local stores are actually going to be doing drafts, which up until this point in time, I have had no opportunity to do here locally, so very excited about it. But there are a number of our locals who this is their first card game and they're not real familiar with drafting at all. So I'm going to be going over a surface level guide here on how to draft and some tips that you can use to help increase the quality of the deck that you're going to be building. I'll actually be doing some guides after this one, actually ranking some of the cards by their ink colors in terms of just limited play. So if you do have the opportunity to check those videos out, I highly encourage you to do so as well. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump right into the format of drafting. Now, if you have never drafted before, or possibly if you have drafted before but you hadn't looked at the rules yet for Lorcana, there are a lot of similarities to other drafting formats, but there are also some differences. First and foremost, due to the number of cards that are in each pack, you actually will start the draft with 4 sealed packs. These packs each contain 12 cards each. Out of those packs, you will have to build at the end of the draft phase a 40 card constructed deck, which means there's only going to be 8 cards that you drafted that you will not play in your deck, which is a very high number of cards that you're actually going to be drafting that will be played with. So you have to be careful and make sure that you're making quality picks all the way through. Now, having said that, the format is a rainbow format, which means there are no color restrictions like there are in your regular constructed format. Where normally you would be limited to 2 colors in your deck construction, you can use all 6 ink colors, so there are no restrictions as far as when you're constructing your deck. So you should be able to play with all the cards that you get, which again, you'll only have 8 cards that you can't play with, which will make a big difference. So now, how does the format actually work? So you will actually sit down at a table with those 4 sealed packs in front of you. You will open the first pack, and 1 pack only. You will go through that pack and you will remove the puzzle piece card from the back. Then you will select 1 card and 1 card only and set it down face down in front of you. That is one of the cards that will be eligible for you to build with in your final deck. You'll set the rest of the cards down to your side and wait for everybody to make the selection that they're going to make for that pack. Once everybody has made their selection and has their pack face down in front of them, you will pass that pack to the right and you will take the pack from the person to your left and you will make your selection now from that pack with only 11 cards for you to make a decision for. You will repeat that process with that same pack until every card has been selected from that pack. So your last pick, you should be past 1 card, and that 1 card only will go down in front of you before you open the second pack. Now, with the opening of the second pack, you'll reverse the direction of the packs that you had picked before. So if you're passing to your right on the first time, the second pack will go to your left this time, and you'll be receiving packs from your right, and you'll continue that process until all 4 packs are completed. So once you have completed that with all 4 packs, you will go to the deck construction phase. You will build your 40 card minimum deck out of the 48 cards that you have drafted. You'll be able to shuffle them up and then play with other people who have drafted decks just like yours. Most formats are going to be best out of 3, but that could change depending on the time constraints of your tournament organizer. So just make sure you check with them before you get started so you know how many games you're supposed to be playing with each and every opponent. Outside of that, the regular game rules apply. Same mulligans, same opening hand size, same win conditions as far as getting to 20 lore or decking yourself out. So nothing changes within the actual game rules itself, just the deck construction and how you come about your 40 card deck. So now that you know how to play it, what are some of the strategies that you can get into? Now, obviously in a rainbow format, a lot of what's going to be happening each and every pack is just taking the best card available. If you've played other drafting formats, sometimes there can be some underlying archetypes that you can support and build and have a little bit of synergy in between your deck. There's not a ton of that in this particular game. Most of the cards are taken at face value. It's not to say that there's not some synergy in the game, but you're not guaranteed to get enough of it to actually ever draw it or support it. If you take one piece of it, you may never even see the second piece again. So I just recommend really just looking for the best card in each deck and evaluating that pack and that pick individually each time. I'm going to give you an acronym here that'll kind of help you prioritize your picks whenever you're going into it. And that acronym is blinkers. So this is just a nice way to help remember what you might be looking for and help you prioritize cards in and of that pack, because some packs are going to have a lot of options that you're going to want to take, and this is going to help kind of give you a little bit of insight on which cards you should be taking first and foremost. If you've played Magic the Gathering before, they have a similar acronym called BREAD, but this game doesn't work exactly like Magic the Gathering, so there are some slight differences. The first and foremost is going to be the B for Bomb. These are cards in the pack that are absolutely disruptive to the game whenever they come into play. Think something like Tinkerbell Giant Fairy. That is a card that absolutely disrupts the game as soon as it comes into play, has very favorable stats for its cost. It's inkable, has an ability when it comes into play, and it has an ability as it stays in play by challenging other characters. It's just a very all-around good card. This kind of card should be a first pick anytime you see it in a pack. Similar cards, without listing off every single card that would fall into this category on the video, would be something like Aladdin Heroic Outlaw. Again, another card with good stats and has an effect that really just changes the state of the game very, very quickly and changes the way your opponent has to play based on it being in play. Second, we have L. L is for lore. Lore generation is how we win this game. First 1 to 20 lore is still going to be the first one that wins this game. This stat, I think, a lot of times in limited formats gets overlooked. I saw it a lot during the starter deck challenges when people were talking about which decks were best and which decks were worse. And a lot of people really rating the Steel and Sapphire deck very, very low, despite the fact that it had the highest lore generation of any of the decks. Now, it did have a lot of uninkable bad cards in it, but we can mitigate the impact of those cards by drafting this stuff out. Having cards with high lore generation sounds like a no-brainer and an easy thing to focus on, but you want to make sure that you do have that on there. So if you're looking at a card that is a 3/4 with 1 lore generation or a 3/3 for 2 lore generation, in those situations, I'm going to opt for the 3/3 with a 2 lore generation, because that is double the amount of win condition on one card that is on the other. All right, next up is Ink, and Ink can honestly probably be even higher up on this list, because this is where a lot of people are going to get themselves in trouble with their deck building. In a 40 card deck, you're really going to have to keep your uninkables probably under 8 and probably as close to like 5 as you can to make sure that you have a solid stream of inkable options as you go up to your top end of your curve. In a limited format, you're going to find yourself kind of being forced to play some 7, 8 drops, and in some situations possibly even higher. Again, like we talked before, you're only going to be able to omit about 8 cards out of the total pool of cards that you have. So in order to make sure that you don't find yourself in a situation where you have too many uninkable cards to allow you to fully capitalize on the inkable cards that you do take, you really need to make sure that you're focusing on inkable options. A lot of times there are going to be good, solid cards that are uninkable that you're just going to have to pass over to make sure that you have plenty of inkable cards in your deck. Really put a very high premium on whether or not a card is inkable or not. So just be careful with that. Like I said, when I was playing around with the starter decks from set 1, the sweet spot seemed to be around 8 uninkables for that top end, and then anything you can get below that is obviously that much better. You don't want to find yourself in a situation where you have 3 or 4 or more uninkables in your hand and you're unable to play any of the higher stuff in your hand without having to put it in your inkwell. Next, we have E for Endurance or Evasive. I didn't want to use Evasive because it's an actual keyword in the game and not the exact thing that I was looking for this particular one, but we're looking for cards that have the ability to stick around. They are hard for your opponent to remove. So Evasive is a stat that I would look for in cards. Things like Ward as well make them very hard to get rid of, but also just things in general like having higher willpower so that they're harder to challenge off, having bodyguard so it's harder to challenge other characters. Stats like that are going to make it hard for your permanents, your characters on board, to be removed from the board. Anything that you can struggle, to where your opponent can't just efficiently take them off, is something that you want to be looking for. Conversely, cards that are very easy for your opponents to take care of, I do tend to avoid those. So when we look at cards like your 1-drop Lilo or your 1-drop Maleficent, those particular cards have very little protection versus anything. They come down very early. They're understated for their cost, and most times they're going to be taken out very, very quickly. Despite having that lore box checked, they miss out on the fact that they're not inkable and that they have no endurance. They have no staying power. They have no ability to stay and stick and play. Your opponent can take care of them very effectively and very efficiently most times. I'd also avoid cards. I'm not a big fan of the cards that have Challenger and they have 0 base power without their Challenger. Now, they absolutely have their effect, but again, having no strength means you're going to lose them on that swing back, so just make sure you're using those appropriately. Next one is removal. Now, removal is generally much higher. Removal, and you might be surprised removal is this far down the list. Removal generally is a much bigger part of the games. The thing with this particular game, though, is you can challenge characters directly. So having the ability to challenge a character is in and of itself a form of removal. And as long as you can do those trades favorably, removal plays a less substantial role in the game. It can really only come into situations to where you are at a disadvantage in the power or the strength and willpower that's on the board, or if you are trying to remove characters that have not been exerted, that they're protecting or had just come into play, which has its purpose. Cards like Smash are very, very good and should absolutely be taken, but I would not prioritize, say, Smash over a 2 lore generator at the 3 spot. All in all, there are some very good removal spells in here. It's just something I would much rather prioritize a character with favorable stats than a removal spell. But if they come to you, they come to you. I think most people will probably be taking them earlier than they are valued at, so that may leave some opportunity in those packs for you to get some really good characters that should not be coming around because people are overvaluing the removal for this particular game. And then the last one, there's going to be a lot of cards left in the packs as you go through them. And I will just say that the stats of characters are always going to override pretty much anything else later in the game. So if you get down to like the nitty gritty, last 4, 5, 6 sometimes cards in a pack, stats are always what I would look for at that point. If you don't know what I mean by stats, strength, willpower, lore, correlation with cost. You're going to be looking for cards like your vanilla characters that have decent stats, maybe some filler cards like your 1-3 for 1s or your 2-3 for 2s. Those kind of cards are what you're going to be looking for late in the pack to fill in those spots. You don't really want to get stuck and burdened down with a bunch of items. There are very few items that are worth playing in a 40 card deck. You really want to just be playing as many copies of characters, because characters both help your win condition and stop your opponent's win condition in one card. Any other card that you're going to be playing, whether it be actions, whether it be items, are going to be doing just one or the other. They're either going to be helping you win or stopping your opponent from winning, but character cards can do both, so I'd always prioritize those, especially towards the end of the packs when the card quality is not going to be super high. So there you guys have it. That is how you play the draft format for the Lorcana card game, as well as some tips to help improve the quality of the decks that you are drafting in those formats. I'd love to hear you guys' feedback. If you've had any experience you want to share, please leave it in the comment section down below. Until next time, guys, Hobby Hero, out.